Welcome, my friends, to another edition of More Bad News, brought to you, as always, by Camel Cigarettes. Take the Camels Challenge, smoke Camels for 30 days, and see for yourself what a difference Camels can bring to your life. My friends, in the world that I grew up with, more doctors smoked Camels than any other cigarette. And I could steal cigarettes from my mother's pack. And from those first stolen cigarettes to the very last cigarettes that I smoked with my mom in her kitchen with black coffee, smoking was a bond between us. I'm living testimony to the blessings of cigarette smoking. Yes, it causes cancer and other illnesses, but it wasn't all that bad. And my mother chose to continue smoking long after she was convinced that it would shorten her life. She wasn't interested in a longer life. She wanted to enjoy the life she had with her son in her kitchen, smoking, drinking black coffee, along with rambling conversations about life. Well, my friends, been another week of very bad news. And of course, the big story is the flooding from the Hurricane Helene. The devastation was enormous. It is enormous. It goes on. I think 1 million people are without power in Georgia, including my grandchildren. They're safe and dry without power. No one really knows how long it's going to take to restore power because the entire region has been devastated. Every disaster now seems to come knocking at my own door. Uh, the hurricane was massive, and the damage is spread across Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina. I remember seeing a video years ago off off some island off the coast, and oh no, I saw a video about Helene, and so this guy was on an island where his family had been living since 1860, and everything had been destroyed and he was now thinking about abandoning because nothing would remain there. And we follow a woman doctor who has a YouTube channel, and she lives in Tampa, Florida. And we like her posts and things. So she survived with her children and her pets, but her home had at least 4 feet of water in it. It was really destroyed. It needs to be completely renovated. She was already contacting contractors, and her immediate problem was to find temporary housing while her home undergoes reconstruction. All the drywall will have to be ripped out, all the appliances replaced. The damage is massive. And she is already giving advice to her audience to make sure you take pictures of everything, that you'll need documentations for the insurance. And in the meantime, her life is going to be consumed by this disaster, certainly for the next year. And how many times can people simply rebuild in the face of repeated natural disasters? Even now, many people are deciding to leave the flood zone areas and to flee as refugees to higher ground. It gives new meaning to the term homeless refugees. Um, I had a colleague here in Michigan who told me that he came here after Katrina. How many times do you have to see everything destroyed before you decide to get out of harm's way? And speaking of insurance, massive destruction like this is enormously costly to insurance companies, which is why they are very reluctant to give flood insurance. Most of the flood insurance in the United States is provided by the federal and state governments. The reason the private insurance companies won't offer flood insurance is because that they would lose money, which means that the massive costs of reconstruction fall on federal and state funds. Um, the flooding is taking place more than just at our doorstep. In Nigeria, 1 million people have been displaced by flooding at big cities, just completely flooded out. I saw a film years ago in which some of these floods they can take weeks for the water to recede. So there was it was a roundabout for miles roundabout. There was flooding, and it was like 4 feet of water, and you could see these people, their homes, they were walking in water up to their hips, and it gives birth to disease. It's horrible. It's an impossible way to live. But there was no escape the water. It was miles and miles and miles and miles around, all of it underneath 4 feet of water. That would take a very long time for the water to recede from the flood. So, uh, and still, we'll clean up after all of this and uh, get back to life in this dystopian era of cognitive dissonance, which is one of the things that I wanted to talk about this week. I first understood cognitive dissonance from an experience that I had in 1967. Gamal Abdel Nasser said that he was going to drive the Jews into the sea and quickly formed an alliance with Jordan, Syria, Iraq, and others to do just that. I was 20, and it was 2 decades since the Holocaust, and now Jews were again facing annihilation. I was a sophomore student at Yeshiva University preparing for my final exams, but when I saw people going about their business as if nothing at all were happening, I dropped out of class without telling my professors or the administration. I went to work to process volunteers to go to Israel, and I left myself in early June. I later realized that what I was experiencing in New York was cognitive dissonance, and the only way that I could resolve it was to go home, go to my people. And Israel, I realized, was more important to me than my own life. I was willing to fly into a war zone to be with my people in my home. Think about that when you hear people talking about Zionism as an ideology. Zionism is much a part of my faith as Shabbos is. My faith is a choice that I make, not because I believe in God or that we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, but because my life has always been structured around certain ancient texts. And beyond the text is the community, and beyond the community is the land, and I'm attached to it all. I am a Jew and a Zionist, and the two things are inseparable for me. But these days I live in a cocoon, trying to stay not only safe, but sane in a terrifyingly dystopian world. And so lately, I've been thinking about what Glenn Coleman called the new crazy. And I came upon this in Reddit, a post about COVID. So this person writes, one of my coworkers said hi to me on the way to the elevator, and her voice was almost entirely gone. And I asked how she was doing, and she said that she had a sore throat, and yesterday she didn't mask because she assumed that it was just allergies, but now it's in her sign and says, so I'm wearing a mask today. It sounds normal, right? Except she was literally not wearing a mask when she said it. And I'm not just talking about wearing a mask that was under her nose or on her chin or having it in her hand or anything, something. I mean, literally, she did not have a mask with her. And she said these words while gesturing to her face. And then she added that was probably nothing and she would be fine departing for the elevator, still fully unmasked, and got in. These last few years, I've experienced so much bullshit, so much willful ignorance, so much harassment, so many absurd contradictions in people's behavior and belief, so much selfishness and cruelty that I genuinely didn't think that anyone could say anything about COVID or masking that could shock me anymore. But this was more than she could deal with. She had to find a place, by herself so she could sit down on the floor and keep her head from exploding. She said, it goes on, I can't even fathom the chasm between my reality and hers that would make this kind of cognitive dissonance possible. I don't know how we ever bridge this shit. Sometimes I feel hope that eventually people won't be able to live with the contradictions anymore, this absurd lie of normality. But at times like this, I don't know. I just don't know. So, two important studies came out this week, and this was reported. The leading immunologist, this was, nature science stuff. So it was COVID can impair. It was a study of COVID's impairment of functions across a full gamut from young, healthy individuals with mild infections to older hospitalized patients with severe COVID. In this post, I'm going to review two new reports related to advances in the field. Okay, so here's the main findings. I'm cutting to the chase here. One, there was a significant reduction in cognitive performance scores in all 8 case clusters that they studied compared with control groups, especially executive functions, who worse among those with severe COVID, abnormal mental health status was also noted. Two, Substantial and persistent ongoing increase in brain injury was noted. Number three, gray matter atrophy, particularly seen in the volume of anterior cingulate cortex. Four, uh, subjective symptoms of COVID impairment were correlated with objective findings. In addition, depression was frequently reported. Five, cognitive deficits equaled about a 20-year deficit. That is, 50-year-olds were performing at a 70-year-old level. Well, folks, that'll have to do it for this week. Let me wish you a Shana Tova Umetukan, speaking of cognitive dissonance, a sweet new year. Break out the honey cake and the wine and say hello to 5785. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You people in 2024, you're never going to catch up to us. I mean, even if we stop counting now, you've got 3,760 years to catch up to us. So stay safe, stay sane. Don't let the cognitive dissonance get to you. And I'll see you next week with more bad news.